Tom Downey here for Bengals Breakdown. The month of June is here, and our goal for the month is to beat the May shares number. That was 97 different shares to Twitter, Facebook, texting it, whatever. In the month of June, let's hit triple digits. Let's start hot with you guys sharing today's video on social media. Leading today's show is this idea of cutting Trent Brown. We'll go more in depth on that in a moment. What the Jaylen Waddle extension means for the Bengals wide receivers, plural intentional there, and some Josh Newton outlook after a very fun viral video of him going up against Chad Ochocinco. First, from Bleacher Report, they're arguing Trent Brown could be a surprise cut candidate for the Bengals, especially if first-round pick Amarius Mims continues to impress and progress, which I think is very important. The number one thing for this team at right tackle is where you're at with Mims. Remember, as I think we all know, Trent Brown is not your future at right tackle. It is clearly Mims. And in an ideal world, Mims is the present in a shorter time frame than maybe the downside scenario ends up being. That's not to say I want to dump Trent Brown and force Mims into the role, whatever. You got time. You don't have to make a decision on this at any point for the next few months, frankly. Trent Brown has been a starting caliber offensive tackle, mostly with New England, over the course of his NFL career. That's also not to say he's been perfect. There have been a couple different times he's had attitude issues. I don't think the Patriots wanted him back at all last year. I don't think that relationship ended all that great. And I do wonder at times how Brown would adjust to, hey, we brought you with the pitch of, you're going to be our starting right tackle. I'm sure he knew there was a very good chance that they would draft a right tackle, if not in round one, early on day two. But he wants to start, obviously. At the back end of his career, if he plays well, he can parlay it into a bigger contract somewhere else, in theory. The Bengals would save some money, and for a team that isn't as cash spending happy as other franchises are, $2.4 million isn't an insignificant amount of money. Yeah, you lose about $1 million because you got to pay somebody else on the roster to backfill that 53rd man roster spot, but still, it's money. I will say this, though, too, and this is the biggest con I see in cutting him. It's a great swing tackle deal. Trent Brown's played left tackle. He's played right tackle. God forbid, knock on wood, if something goes down to Orlando Brown, you don't want to play Cody Ford or Jackson Carman or Deontay Smith. You could play Trent Brown, though. So I'm down to have considerations if Trent Brown struggles or does something negative. But if the scenario is Mims plays great, wins the starting job, I want to keep Trent Brown as my swing tackle because then I feel really good about that offensive tackle group in a way I frankly haven't for a long time in Cincinnati. So what do you think? Should cutting Trent Brown be a consideration for the Bengals? It is the pinned comment on today's video. So if that ad comes on YouTube, that's just fine. Or no one needs to go watch it. Y for yes, N for no at that pinned comment. Now, the Jaylen Waddle contract was a few days ago. We have the nitty-gritty details now, and I do want to break down how it potentially impacts the Bengals. Not just T. Higgins, by the way, of course, we'll begin with him. A 3-year, $84.75 million deal between the Dolphins and between the Dolphins and Waddle had been agreed to a couple days ago. First off, the numbers from last year only obviously drastically favor Jaylen Waddle over T. Higgins. Maybe that's not the biggest surprise in the world with the way he had played previously. It's not a huge shock, I suppose. But Waddle was highly impactful, a big play machine, vertical threat, speedy, etc. All the things you typically like to see from the superstar wide receiver, by the way. It's a big contract as well. In fact, it's almost so large, I don't think it has much of an impact on T. Higgins and the Bengals. Remember, Higgins allegedly wanted the Michael Pittman contract. The Bengals weren't that close on it. And now the Pittman contract looks kind of like a steal for Indy, and everything else seems pretty light from that perspective. A 3-year deal would have probably come last off. You've seen some of these teams do this. Waddle, Devonta Smith do these shorter-term deals. Texans with Nico Collins to an extent as well. And mostly because they're doing them a year earlier than normally planned, and they're utilizing that 5th-year option as part of the contract. So it's an extension with a lot of guaranteed money and high-end average per years that are already kind of backloaded in. So it comes a little bit more team-friendly to do that. And in the end, I don't think Higgins gets extended. I think it'll be a fully new contract with somebody else next offseason. Somebody will pay him big money, but I don't think that, and maybe in the open market, things get wildly out of control for T. Higgins, kind of like we saw with Calvin Ridley, which that deal also, by the way, kind of looks cheap now for Tennessee because of how much other receivers are getting. But the longer you wait, the more you get paid. But for the Bengals and Higgins, I don't think there's a huge impact. Now, if you want to get the Bengals NFL draft hat that is available from Fanatics, the official NFL draft hat, go do it. Chatsports.com/Bengals draft hats. We'll put that link in the comments section and the description of today's show. That's chatsports.com/Bengals draft hats. Got different styles, colors, mesh back, normal, fitted, etc. I would check out the link, by the way, because you can kind of see it there. It's like a little 3D effect they've got going on. Easier to see if you were to pull it up on the website as opposed to trying to zoom in on YouTube or something. I would just go check it out. Chatsports.com/Bengals draft hat, so you get a good feel for what that hat ends up looking like. Now, Jamar Chase, in a similar fashion, is Waddle kind of in between Higgins and Chase in terms of what I think they'll end up getting if they were to sign with the Bengals, right? It's not going to happen for Higgins, but Chase is going to get big-time money. And if you wanted to do the deal this offseason, I think Chase would probably want a 3-year deal because it allows him to hit that open market even sooner again and cash in again. That's what smart NFL agents and players want to do. And I would love to do a Jamar Chase extension now. And I think that getting it done early would save money. If you can jump in line here, you'll save money in the long term. Now, I think the framework of a shorter-term deal would probably work for Chase. It's probably how you help get that deal done as opposed to him saying he wants to wait or his agent saying he wants to wait, whatever. I think a 3-year, $100 million deal, big money numbers, I think actually would maybe work for all sides. It's a shorter deal than what the Bengals, I think, would prefer. That might cause an issue. But if Chase just waits another month or 2 or 3 or whatever, Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb are probably both going to become the highest paid wide receiver depending on what order they go in. And by that point, you're probably already in the $35 million per year territory on what's probably going to be a 4-year deal. And in general, every year you add to a contract, it's about $2 million more per year because of the way you're able to backload contracts and structure them. So if I'm the Bengals, I'd love to get the ball rolling. Now, I think maybe more so than other contracts, this is a good example of it takes two. I would anticipate Jamar Chase shows up for mandatory minicamp. I don't think he's going to be absent as he's due for a new deal, but his camp also knows just wait. Be patient. Even if you wait a year, it'll pay off in a pretty major way for you next year because the guaranteed money is kind of lagged behind for wide receivers. It has not been as expensive guaranteed money-wise among the non-quarterbacks. It's more expensive for defensive ends, for tackles. Guys like Lamb and Jefferson and Chase are probably going to change that. So if you were the Bengals, would you extend Jamar Chase this offseason? E for extend or W for wait. I did want to give some love to Josh Newton. Bengals didn't really drastically impact their cornerback room, which I wouldn't have minded doing. They had some interest in some other players like Christian Fulton, and they got Dax Hill down there now. Maybe Josh Newton ends up being a good fit for the Bengals. And for a team that does like to play plenty of man-to-man coverage, I think Newton fits that super well as the first-round pick out of TCU. I think that's a good fit for him in terms of his impact, his upside, etc. Newton, the last 2 seasons, frankly kind of struggled down the stretch against for TCU. The Texas game in particular was just not a good showing for him. They kind of increased those numbers, but he played in a man-heavy scheme, and the press man background, which we saw in the viral clip here in a little bit, certainly comes through. I had a 4th/5th round grade on him. I thought he would go a little bit earlier because it's tougher to find the man cover corner than it is to find the zone cover corner because I think it's harder to do, frankly. More teams run in zone these days. But I'm sure you guys saw the viral clip of Chad Johnson, a.k.a. Chad Ochocinco, going up against Josh Newton. And Newton clearly won. Ochocinco tweeting out, when you haven't to lose since a decade and think you still got it. He's still in great shape. He got to the outside, and then Josh Newton just one-arm jammed the shit out of him. And Johnson stumbled and gave up on the route. That's Newton's game. Is press man. It's what that was. So I think it's kind of a funny more than anything moment, but I think it's a good thing. So I think as a day 3 sleeper, I'm very intrigued by Newton in Cincinnati. If you guys want more off-season Bengals videos, hit that sub button, youtube.com/Bengals TV. We'll be here through minicamp, the rest of the OTAs, training camp, preseason, and, of course, the regular season.